Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 863, and today's date is January 10th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. I just uploaded an interview with Anita Whitney, and this is about central bankers, corporations, how they took over the U.S., and what their endgame is. To view and listen to the video, you can go right over to the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel, or you can come over to the x22report.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, you'll see the video there, or you can go to the news site, which is newssentinel.com. That's NEWZSENTINEL.com. That site is where we're streaming many different news sources into one place, including video. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, on Friday, the job numbers came out, and we reviewed them. And we're starting to see, and this is also coming from Paul Craig Roberts, where he's saying that these job numbers for December are worse than we even thought. Now, I talked about how they're counting part-time jobs as full-time jobs. So if one person has multiple part-time jobs, that is counted as multiple full-time jobs. And what Paul Craig Roberts is saying is that the middle-class jobs are continuing to decline. The new jobs are jobs that pay considerably less, and we know they're part-time, which, people aren't getting their health benefits, people are not getting their retirement. And the new jobs are going to people outside the prime working age. The unavoidable conclusion is that for the majority of Americans, the economic prospects, they're declining. Now, seasonal adjustments are used during this period of the year, and they do it throughout other parts of the year. And what we are seeing right now is that this entire payroll number, the seasonally adjusted gain, which was 292,000, is telling us that the jobs added were not 292,000. Now, I calculated that these jobs, if we subtract the multiple of 2 or 3 part-time jobs, we would really add about, 90,000, 80,000. But Paul Craig Roberts broke it down even further, and when he subtracted out all the multiple part-time jobs, it looks like we gained around 11,000 jobs. And what this tells us is that the labor force is a lot worse than we expected, which we kind of knew, and we knew the government was continually manipulating all these numbers. And he went on to say, if all this was real, the labor force participation rate would not continually be declining. And this is what we're seeing, because you have to remember, they are not counting those people who haven't been on an interview in the last 4 weeks. And if you're continually sending out resumes and you're not getting anyone to respond to these resumes, or as people have been emailing me saying that there's no place to even send their resumes, you're not counted as looking for a job. They count you as out of the labor force. And this is what they've been doing. And people get discouraged and say, okay, I've been trying and trying and trying, and there's just no jobs for me whatsoever. And we can see at this point that this economy right now is built up on a complete illusion. And it's getting harder and harder to convince everyone that the economy is doing well. And as we break down the numbers and the manipulated statistics, we are seeing that, this whole thing is completely falling apart, and the economy is right back where we started in 2008, and it's getting worse than that. And we know that the United States government central bankers need to provoke a war. Now remember, they came out with North Korea saying that they detonated a nuclear weapon underground, which created this earthquake. And of course, everything so far shows there's no evidence that they've done this. And they're continually pushing the propaganda. Oh my God, we need to ramp up our military spending. The South Koreans already put together their loudspeaker system, and we see the United States using more provocation towards North Korea. The U.S. conducted a B-52 flight in South Korea on Sunday, and they flew over. Of course, they're saying that they've done this to reinforce the Pacific countries that the United States is behind them, but this was done to provoke North Korea. All of this is being done to provoke all these countries, because what is happening right now is that this economy is collapsing. They're running out of time. Russia kind of messed up their plans in the Middle East, in Ukraine, and they need to get a war started. We see out in Ukraine, Kiev has reinforced its position along the line of engagement in Donbass with a howitzer battery, and a right sector radicals are moving more and more equipment up to this line. And they are definitely getting prepared for a major offensive. We're also finding out there were Ukrainian troops disguised as militia fighters who were trying to hamper the OSCE observers work near the village of Vidnonye, located in the buffer zone. And you can see right now they're doing whatever they possibly can to create some type of incident, to cover their tracks, to cover up that they're continually shelling. They have not stopped shelling the Donbass area. They're continually doing this. We see that Turkey is kind of reneging on the 3 billion deal to control the borders. Now, we know the EU gave them 3 billion euros and said, listen, we will give you even more if you stop this outflow of refugees. And they're saying that Turkey is not going to get any more money because they haven't stopped the flow. And Turkey's saying, yes, we have stopped the flow because Greece is seeing a decline in the amount of refugees coming into their country. But the EU is saying, well, we're seeing a decline because it's been bad weather and they can't make the trip. So right now, the EU is saying that they're going to stop the funding and stop all of this unless Turkey lives up to its promise. And we're going to have to watch that situation very carefully. Now, a couple days ago, the U.S. was out there saying that the Harry S. Truman was very close to this alleged missile test that Iran was holding. And they didn't have any proof, they didn't have any video or satellite information on this. And then all of a sudden they produced some information. Now, when I look at the video, it looks like an oil tanker, and it doesn't look like an aircraft carrier. But what's amazing about all of this is that they have video footage of this, which doesn't look like what they're saying it is, but they don't have video imagery of the oil tankers that the Islamic State were using. And we know that the U.S. has satellites above Syria. They're basically holding bombing operations in Syria for over a year, and they never caught on video or satellite imagery any of the convoys. But the Treasury always knew how much they were making. So they really get themselves stuck when they start producing these videos. Now, when we look at this video, it looks completely fake. It looks like this is not even in the area of what they were talking about, because when you look at this ship, it looks completely like an oil tanker. And the whole point of this is, if there was really a missile drill going on, why was the aircraft carrier so close, around 1,500 yards away? They sailed it there for provocation, for propaganda, and we see this happening a lot. Now, out in Iran, we also see that Iranians poured into the streets in an anti-Saudi protest. And what's very interesting about this protest is that the people in the front are carrying signs that are in English, where they have signs, "Go Al Saud." And the question to me is, who are these signs for? It looks like they created them and put these people in the front, and I don't think this is Iran who did this. I think this is other forces that are basically bringing in agent provocateurs, paying certain people to gin this up so there's some type of conflict, chaos, because we know they want the Syrian talks derailed. We know they want to go for the prize, and what the prize is Iran. But what we're seeing right now, there is no reason for these signs to be pre-printed in English. And this tells you that this is completely set up, and these people that were pushed to the front are staged. And we see this happen a lot. We see it happen in Ukraine. We saw it happen in Libya, in Lebanon, in Yemen. And basically, they're trying to propagandize the American people with this. And they're trying to push their agenda in creating complete and utter chaos in Iran to basically destabilize the entire region. And this is their plan, because their plan with Syria is completely falling apart because Russia is involved there. Now, we're getting reports that the United States is creating new units to combat terrorist propaganda inside the country, and the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice will announce the establishment of the Countering Violent Extremism Task Force, the CVETF. And what's very interesting about this is that the United States government created the Islamic State. It is their proxy army. They handle all the propaganda for the Islamic State. They put together the videos with Israel, Site Intelligence, and other agencies. And now they're creating a group to counter their own propaganda. And what this tells me is that they're creating this group to go after those people who do not believe the story that the government is pushing out there. Now, Germany, they are considering the deployment of about 150 to 200 troops near Libya to assist with the training of the Libyan armed forces. And we know what this is all about. We know there's thousands of soldiers coming in from Egypt, the U.S., England, Italy, to basically go back into Libya and get rid of that pesky elected government in Tripoli, and they want to reinstall the puppet government and have complete control of Libya. And we can see they are getting prepared and ready to go into Libya for another major invasion, offensive war to reinsert the puppet government. Now, Syria, before we have these peace talks, they have a requirement. And the Syrian foreign minister said his government was still waiting to receive the names of the opposition figures attending the peace talks. And they also want the groups who are considered terrorists. And they want the coalition forces to come up with this list. And these requests are preconditions for the peace talks. And so far, they have received absolutely nothing. And we're going to have to watch this very carefully to see if they actually get to the peace talks, because this is supposed to be coming up in about 15 days on January 25th. Or are we going to see another major event? Because we see already with Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Qatar, Bahrain, and all the other coalition forces, it seems like they are preparing and creating chaos in the region with Iran and Saudi Arabia and the other countries, and it looks like they're trying to continually push this agenda further and further until they get something going here. Now, we understand that this entire economy is falling apart, and we understand that the dollar is dying. The petrodollar is dying in the Middle East because all of these countries have thrown out their puppet governments. They want their country back. They want the central bank out. They want the U.S. government out of their business. And they don't want to use the dollar on their natural resources. They want to use any currency they want to use to trade with other countries. And of course, the United States government central bankers can't have this, because if they do let this happen, the dollar collapses. And this is why they're using war and force and killing many people to maintain this. Now remember, this is not the people of the United States. This is the central bank / U.S. government that is promoting this, along with other countries. And during the year of 2013, there was a G20 meeting, which met 3 times, once in Moscow, twice in D.C., And the second meeting in D.C. in April was part of the meeting with the IMF and the World Bank. And during these meetings, it was strongly suspected that there was some type of an agreement, a reset agreement. And this agreement was made based on the U.S. and the dollar failing and the petrodollar failing. And they wanted to switch this over to a new system. And we can see how this is evolving because we've been talking about this for quite a while, where everything is moving from west to east. And we see that the yuan now is included in the SDR basket. And we see that they've been making bilateral trades all around the world. They've set up clearinghouses. There are a couple countries in Africa now that are trading using the yuan instead of the dollar, which is their reserve currency now. And what we're seeing right now is that instead of the petrodollar, what they were going to use for the trading of the oil was going to be the basket of SDRs, which include the yuan, the yen, the euro. And we already know that Russia and China are trading not using the dollar whatsoever. They're using their own currencies. And they were also talking about using currencies that weren't in the SDR. However, the countries wanted to trade. But as we know, the U.S. government central bankers, they're not going to let this happen. And this is why they're trying to provoke war right now. Because if they went ahead with this plan, the outcome would be devastating. First of all, the United States government would lose their power to impose sanctions on nations. They would lose their edge on controlling nations. And if this reset was rolled out, what would happen? Well, we would see imported goods rise significantly for the first month, maybe 20% or so, another 20% soon after. And this would put the standard of living in America to drop to the level of Mexico over a year or two, maybe faster. And they are already predicting in this meeting that there's going to be social unrest in urban centers of Europe and America. And they have plans to lock down major cities of the world under their new laws, the anti-terror, the anti-extremism plans. And we see how they were pushing these laws all throughout Europe, how the United States has this new propaganda force. We have DHS, new laws on the books that are going after and defining who terrorists are. And we can see that all of this has been done and prepped for this major reset. Now, it looks like they're just not going to let this reset happen. Now, let's not be confused of why they're not going to let it happen. They're not going to let it happen not for the people and their way of life changing. They're not going to let it happen is because they're going to lose the power they have, the creation of free money that they have. This is why they're provoking war. This is why they want a war to distract what is really coming. This is why they need this war, because they do believe that they will be able to win the war and then reset the system. And they will not stop until they get a war started. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.